Wait, did God come down and become human, sacrifice himself?
God the Son became God our brother.
He's still God.
God the Son.
Now, catch me. Now, sometimes it's... Thankfully, in this situation, you have a British accent versus an American accent, so you can figure out who's saying what. So Glen has said, God the Son has become God our brother. Now, has entered into human flesh for the purpose of the redemption of God's people. But did you hear Dillahunty? Listen to what Dillahunty says here.
God the Son became God our brother.
He's still God.
God the Son.
He's still God. Well, so do you hear the Unitarianism in Dillahunty's assumption? He's not functioning as a Trinitarian, or at least as someone who ever was, or even understands the doctrine of the Trinity.
Okay.
God our brother. Right? The son
Are you a non-Trinitarian? Sorry.
See, are you a non-Trinitarian? He's thinking that modalistic Unitarianism is the Trinity. I mean, if Matt Dillahunty's understanding of the Trinity is not modalistic, then I don't understand what he's saying here. I don't understand what he said before. I understand what he's saying now. I understand how he's responding to Scrivener. It just seems to me very, very plain. This man never understood Nicaea. He never understood the Athanasian Creed. He never understood any of the... Because my recollection is he was some sort of a Protestant. So any of the statements of faith, Westminster, anything that came from that, Three Forms of Unity, whatever, he wasn't Trinitarian. And I don't see anything in atheism that would require you to automatically lose your understanding of what you supposedly once believed. I don't get that either.
That's precisely because I'm Trinitarian. God the Son,
right,
became God our brother, full of the Holy Spirit,
okay,
in order to unite us as family back to the same source, back to the Father.
So, you hear how would I have responded to that? I would have said the second person of the Divine Trinity, the Son, took on human flesh to use the specific... You look at the Baptist Catechism. It does a great job. I think it's 23, 24, one of the questions. The fullness of human nature, not in a fallen state, without sin, but not just a body either. And the incarnation is real. It's the Son who became incarnate, not the Father, not the Spirit, for the purpose of functioning as the Redeemer of God's people, prophet, priest, and king, to the glory of the triune God, because that's sort of how the early church summarized it in Philippians chapter 2. I mean, if that is a fragment of an early hymn, and I think that it is, in Philippians 2, 5 through 11, the focus is not upon us. The focus is upon God, to the glory of God the Father. So there's already been an establishment in the mechanism before this that Glen Scrivener has laid out, that the focus is upon mankind. And I think that leads to having to deal with things from a different perspective. Let's just put it that way.
Okay.
This is basic Trinitarian theology.
Did God not sacrifice himself?
Did God not sacrifice himself? Again, who is the functional Unitarian here? Who is functioning upon the assumption of Unitarianism? He does not seem to recognize the distinction between the divine persons. He does not seem to recognize that it was not the Father who became incarnate. It was not the Spirit who became incarnate. It was the Son who became incarnate. It's just a part of his thinking.
The Father sent the Son.
But they're the same.
But they're the same. Modalistic Unitarianism. And if someone, I've got Twitter up here. If someone out there knows what church Matt Dillahunty came from, if you could tweet that for me, or if you could look it up, Rich, I don't know if it's out there. It may take too long to find it. But I would think I would remember, but it doesn't necessarily, because I don't remember reading anything specifically about Matt Dillahunty's past. Southern Baptist. Well, I've met more than one modalistic Southern Baptist. 25 years, Southern Baptist. That's what Rich is telling me. Well, the Baptist faith and message is plainly Trinitarian, but remember when a oneness group, or at least with oneness people in it, Phillips, Craig, and Dean, sang for the Southern Baptist Convention? One of the things we pointed out at the time is that the Baptist Faith and Message 2000 does not contain enough specificity on the doctrine of the Trinity to detect modalism. At least the modern UPCI version of modalism. And what I mean by that is the statement made by the Baptist Faith and Message does not emphasize the pre-existent, the eternal pre-existence of the divine persons in such a way as to force a modalist to go, I can't sign that. It's mushy enough to be squeezed into a modalistic understanding. It's not what they intended. That is not an appropriate use of it. By any stretch of the imagination, they intended to define the doctrine of the Trinity appropriately. But the fact is that is the one area of the doctrine of the Trinity that most evangelicals struggle to express. And as a result, the Baptist Faith and Message does not clearly state that. If you were to read any commentaries on it, if you were to read anybody who worked on it, you could come to a proper understanding. They're not modalists. They're not promoting modalism. It's not consistent with modalism. But the point is that as it is stated, it does not, with sufficient clarity, define that particular issue. So, Southern Baptist, huh? Well, okay. Yeah, that fits. That fits.
The Father sent the Son.
But they're the same.
They're not the same.
They're part of the Trinity.
Yeah, they are definitely.
They are one, right?
They are definitely part of the Trinity.
Are they one, though?
They're united, absolutely. The Father, Son, and Spirit.
United. I mean, we're united at a table, but we're not one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, he is plainly, unquestionably promoting a modalistic understanding of the Trinity. So the fact of the matter is, Matt Dillahunty was a heretic as a Christian and is a heretic as an atheist. He's, and something tells me that if someone were to point this out to him, he'd go, okay, I don't think anybody really knows. But he might go, but hey, yeah, maybe I have to do some reading and figure out what the actual historical doctrine is. If he were to, in a non-mocking fashion, in a way that actually seeks to try to understand, if he were to read the Athanasian Creed, you cannot read the Athanasian Creed and come up with this. It is specifically designed to make sure you can't come up with a Unitarian modalistic understanding of the doctrine of the Trinity. But whether he's ever done that or not, I don't know.
The Father is in the Son, and the Son is in the Father, so that they are united on a level that is far superior to ours.
The Father is in the Son, and the Son is in the Father. I'm not sure that was the best response. Why not just simply say there is one being of God, shared by three divine persons, fully by three divine persons, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. The being of God cannot be divided into parts and pieces. Somewhere along the way, you've got to define for him the difference between being and person. There's no way to discuss the doctrine of the Trinity as long as you're stuck with the 1 + 1 + 1 = 3 and also equals 1 stuff. You just have to. You have to be able to make the distinction that is necessary to be made in understanding what the doctrine of the Trinity is. I know you don't want to. When the thing drops that Doug Wilson and I did last week, this morning sometime, we spent a lot of time talking about what they call the opera ad intra and the opera ad extra, the internal operations and external operations of the Trinity. And we're talking about how you recognize Father, Son, and Spirit. And it's easy when it comes to the roles they've taken in the redemption of mankind. In the economy of salvation, it's easy to distinguish between Father, Son, and Spirit there. But how do you do that before eternity? As they exist in perfect harmony and love and unity with one knowledge for the confused people out there, or the people who just don't like me and just want to misrepresent me. How do you distinguish? Because that's where the argument in regards to patriarchy, ESS, eternal subordination of the Son. That's what we're talking about. It gets into the weeds. But it has to. How do you distinguish between them? I realize getting into all that stuff with an atheist, unbelievable. When you're supposed to be talking about can atheism ground, okay, I get it. But there are effective ways to say we're talking about is one being of God, and person and being are not the same thing. There is a way to do that.
But why does there need to be a blood sacrifice?
Well, because to walk away from God, to be disconnected from life.
Did anyone else, as soon as you heard that, go, well, that's interesting. The first two questions that Dr. Cotty asked me in the mosque in Memphis, we don't understand the Trinity, explain that to us. And why did a part of God have to die? First two questions. And there you have,
To walk away from God, to be disconnected from life, means death, right? And in the Bible, the life is in the blood.
Well, who made that rule?
It's the nature of the case, don't you think? If God is life, God is the source of life.
No, God made that rule by his creative decree. So the universe in which we live, that he placed us in, for his glory and his purposes, establishes this reality. And you as an atheist don't have any reality, any counter reality to even offer other than utter randomness and chaos.